You mean blocked by trees or something like that? That'll happen. How many people know what the summer triangle is? The summer triangle. Okay. We'll talk about that. It's not a constellation, it's actually made up of 3 constellations, but it's an asterism, which just means several stars in a pattern. So the summertime, just like the sun, and the heat, and the haze. Well, welcome everyone. I'm Lee. I'm the Vice President. Our President, Dave, is in the back. And our other 2 officers are not here. I know one of them's on vacation. I'm not sure about the other.
Both are on vacation.
You good back there?
As good as we're going to get, I think, unfortunately.
Okay. Tonight, our program is kind of loose. We've got a lot of things we can talk about, but I'm not too sure how deeply you want to delve into each one of these, so we'll let you decide that. We're going to start off, though, with our webcast put out there by Rob Webb, a club member, about what's going on in the sky this month.
Hi everybody, and welcome to Observing with Webb for July of 2016. July gives us 5 different visible planets that we can see. Well, all 5 visible planets that we can see with the naked eye. We have a chance to see all of them this month. And we got some warm nights and short nights, but warm nights. So yeah, July's going to be pretty good. So let me just dive right in. I'll start talking about the planets that you can see. Then I'll go over the events that are happening, not too many. And then I'll talk about the constellations. So here we go. What will we see? So I have it set up for July 15th, an average middle of the month day. And I'm going to go to sunset. I'm going to look to the west. And what I'm going to see over here is Jupiter off in the west. Okay. That's the first one you're going to be able to see all month. Look to the west, find a bright spot out there. Yeah, you can see it's a little bit to the left of Leo the line, or under the line. And yeah, so get out there a little before 11 p.m. It starts to set around 11 p.m. depending on the time of the month. And also, get your observing in now, because what you'll notice is that day by day, Jupiter gets lower and lower and lower in the sky, so it's going to be harder and harder to see. So, anyway, let me get back to July 15th. So look at the west, find Jupiter, get your telescope out, look at the cloud bands, look at the Galilean moons. That's job number 1. Job number 2 is after sunset. In fact, let's go to 9 o'clock. And let me just get the moon out of there a couple days later. Just look to the south. And you'll see Saturn and Mars making a nice little appearance over in the south. You'll see Scorpius over here, and Libra over here, the scales. And just look south, and I would highly suggest bringing a map of Scorpius and Libra. Now what's happened is Mars has actually moved from being pretty close to Saturn all the way over here in Libra. And that's going to kind of continue to do that for over the next couple of months. And yeah, look for Mars. It's going to be the brighter one of the 2. It's also going to be red. Saturn's going to be off to the left. It's going to be less bright. And Saturn's a lot cooler in the telescope because it's got the rings that make it look so fantastic. Also, don't get confused with Antares down here. Okay, Antares is a bright star. but it kind of twinkles a bit more than Mars. So if you're getting confused, from my observations, I feel like Antares twinkles a bit more, whereas Mars is sort of a dead red. But yeah, so they're going to be out there. What's going to happen is if, let's say you're out a little bit later, okay, let's fast forward time, it's now getting later and later and later, Saturn and Mars are going to go down, and then Mars will set around 1 a.m., and then Saturn will be about an hour and a half later after that. So we've got Jupiter, Mars and Saturn, and we should also be able to see Venus and Mercury, but we got to take a look around sunset. So I'm going to go back in time. I'm going to go back to sunset. I'm going to look over here in the west. Okay? Now, this is July 19th. You should be able to see Venus after sunset. Now, it's going to be kind of tough because it's right after sunset. The sky is still bright. Excuse me, but it's not impossible. So what's going to happen over the next couple of nights, though, is it's going to be a little darker around the same time. So Venus should be easier to see, be a little bit higher. And Mercury is also going to be up and to the left. In fact, supposedly,
Yeah, this is wrong.
looking at Venus, supposedly you can see it after the first week of July. And it only sets about half an hour after the sun. But it's bright, so Venus is going to be easier to see. So if you can find Venus, you can also find Mercury, but you won't really be able to see Mercury until the last week of July. But it will be there. I would suggest bringing binoculars for that case. And then, so really, the end of July is a great time to see all of the planets all at once. So you can see Venus, Mercury, Jupiter, Mars, and Saturn all in one shot at the end of July, which is pretty remarkable, pretty cool to see. Venus and Mercury will be hard to see, but they'll be there. All right, so yeah, let's talk about some events. And let's do that by tracking the moon. Now, the 4th of July is when we have a new moon, and that means we can't see the moon. I was talking in my podcast about how having a new moon during 4th of July means, I don't know, maybe you can get some good pictures of the constellations and some fireworks all over the shop. I don't know. Ask Wayne, he'll probably figure that out. Or Dave. But new moon on the 4th. On the 5th will be a slight crescent moon. You can sort of see it down here. Zoom in. And then what's going to happen over the next couple nights is the moon's going to get higher and higher and thicker and thicker. And then on the 8th, the moon and Jupiter are going to be about 4 degrees apart. It's about 3 finger widths at arm's length. Okay, so not too far. And yeah, then let's see. If we follow the pattern, the moon's going to keep getting higher and higher, and thicker and thicker until July 11th. July 11th is the first quarter moon. What happens with the first quarter moon is the right hand of it is lit up. You can see it from sunset all the way, even before sunset. You can see it until about midnight. And yeah, that's about it. So again, what's going to happen, night by night, is going to get thicker and thicker and more toward the east in the night sky. And then from the 13th to the 16th is what I have as a really good time to be looking at the moon, Saturn, and Mars. So on the 13th, when you go out, you'll be able to see a gibbous moon with Mars down to the left of that, and Saturn almost directly left. That's about 9:30 p.m. And you can sort of see Antares there as well. Now, the next night, on July 14th, the moon makes a really cool triangle with Mars and Saturn. In fact, pretty much a rectangle if you include Antares there. So that's a pretty neat sight to see. You don't get that too often. The next night, the moon gets really close to Saturn, about 3 degrees above Saturn. And the next night, Mars, Saturn, and the moon make sort of a line in the sky. So go ahead, take a look at it. If you're having trouble finding Saturn or Mars regularly, use the moon as your guidepost. So go out there from the 13th to the 16th. And then if you've noticed, throughout the past couple of nights, the moon has gotten bigger. Let me rewind. That was the 13th, 14th, 15th, 16th. And then if we keep going, 17th, 18th, 19th, oh, gotta zoom out. What do we get? A nice full moon. That's going to be out the entire night from sunset to sunrise. Very nice. Then really not much happens for the next week, except if you look at the moon, okay, you're going to have to get up later and later. Let me go to a couple days later up. Now the moon's not rising until about 11 o'clock. And it's going to be thinner. And if you go all the way to the 26th of July, you have to wait until, oh, there we go, about 1 a.m. for the moon to rise up. And even then, actually let me put on the 26th there, even then, it's a third quarter moon. The left half is lit up. It rises at about, it looks like about midnight 30, somewhere around there. And you're going to be able to see that from about that time until the morning, and even into the morning. And the last cool thing I want to share with you is, if you've noticed, the moon kind of follows this green path. Now, technically, that green path is ecliptic. That's technically the path that the sun travels, but the moon is not far off. And what happens is, there are some stars within the path. So if you watch the moon, it's going to get really close to, oh, Aldebaran, the brightest star in Taurus. So now what you don't notice during most of the time is the moon is actually slowly moving across the constellation. Very, very slowly. You don't notice it, but you can notice it if it happens to line up with a very bright star, such as Aldebaran. Now you see I'm moving forward, moving forward, moving forward. And according to Starry Night here, the moon will cover up Aldebaran right about there, about 6:13 in the morning. Washington, D.C. is supposed to be 6:05 in the morning. So, get out there, see what you can see. But you'll need a telescope for this because it's during the daytime. And when it's during the daytime, you can't really see the star because it's daytime. So it looks like 6:10, somewhere around there. And what's going to happen is time is going to go by, and right around, oh, it doesn't even show it. So 6:53, before 7 o'clock, Aldebaran will jump out behind it. So that's the last cool thing for July. Let's do one last little round of constellations. So let me go back to July 15th. And let's go to sunset, and let's move ahead a little bit. Let's go like 9:30, and let's look straight above us. I don't recommend it, because you can get kind of confused and turned around very quickly. But if you look straight up, what do you see? Well, around 9:30, you'll be able to see Moody's, the Borealis, the Kite, the Shepherd, the ice cream cone, and you can see Corona Borealis. I think, zoom in a little bit, and these stars, I find them to be more of a C as opposed to this little curve here. And you've also got Hercules up here, which has the beautiful Hercules cluster. This is not working out today, is it? Hercules cluster right there in Hercules, which is fun to find with the telescope. Okay. Now let's say you are looking at the zenith again, and let's say it's later in the day, night. That's when you can see the summer triangle here. Okay? Summer triangle is actually 3 constellations, actually the 3 brightest stars in each of the 3 constellations. This is Lyra, and it's got the bright star Vega. This is Cygnus the Swan, and it's got the bright star Deneb. And then this is the bright constellation Aquila, which has the bright star Altair. So these 3 stars make the summer triangle, which even in light polluted skies, even by beach towns with lots of lights and boardwalk and all that, you can still see the summer triangle. You might not see the constellations, but that's what you can see. Now let's go to the early morning. So you go out on the beach and you stay up until dawn. You might be able to see Lacerda and Pegasus and Andromeda sort of straight up above you as well. Let me talk about this. There's a summer constellations first, okay? In fact, let me look south, oh, sorry, yes, south. Let me look southwest. Sorry, just got a little turned around here. There. So remember, summer triangle over here. The spring constellations are actually setting in the west, okay? And you can find, no, you know what? I'm going to skip that. I just want you to take one more look. That's what I was going to do. I had the timer on. Let's go to about 10:30. Again, I want to encourage you to find Scorpius out there in the south. It's a nice fish hook. Libra is out there as well. If you look north, what you can do is find the Big Dipper, okay? If you find the Big Dipper, 7 bright stars, follow that arc of the handle. Follow that arc to the next bright star, which is Arcturus. Follow the arc to Arcturus, and that's Booties the Shepherd. And if you follow the arc to Arcturus and then speed on to Spica, the next brightest star on that curve, that's the brightest star in Virgo. But yeah, other than that, I think that's pretty much it for the month of July. We've got some short nights but warm nights, and yeah, with that, I'd like to finish off by wishing you very clear dark skies for the month of July.
I think I pushed the wrong button. Okay. All right, any questions about that? So you saw how to find the summer triangle. By 10 o'clock, okay, I'm facing north right now, so south is behind me, and that makes this east. Summer triangle is rising in the east. All 3 stars should be visible by 10 o'clock at the latest. And I say that they're actually clear the horizon about 9, but it's just not dark enough to see them yet. That's the problem with this time of the year. The nights are so short. All 3 planets, you know how to find those now. Jupiter is easy to spot with binoculars because it has 4 moons. Okay, and you typically will see at least 3 of those moons. But to see them in binoculars, you have to hold them very steady, like rest them on the roof of the car or something like that. Mars, it just looks like a bright star. Okay, but in the telescope, you can see a disk, and sometimes some surface features, some of the bigger ones. Saturn, any telescope will show the rings, but sorry, binoculars will not. So Saturn is easily the best of the planets right now, especially because it looks exactly like it does in the pictures. Any questions about that? Anything Rob had to say? Okay, we'll be going back to a little bit of that in some pictures. Yes.
I saw Uranus and Neptune were up there, but you didn't touch on them. Is that something he's gonna look at maybe next month or the month after that? When they're a little higher, not so late at night?
A little bit higher. They are there. The problem with both, well, Uranus actually, in a telescope, looks like a tiny green ball. Okay, there's not much there to look at. Neptune is even smaller, and it looks a little bluish, but still, you can tell it's not a star in a telescope. But with binoculars or your eyes, forget it. It just looks like a star, or a faint star in these cases. If you come to one of our star watches, we'll be able to show this to you. Dave?
Can you turn on your mic?
Okay. I guess people want to hear me. Is that any better?
Yes.
Sorry about that. I usually keep it off because sometimes, never mind. Okay, let's go to our calendar and review that very quickly. For July, of course, we're here right now. Notice it's pretty much devoid of anything going on except for a public star watch on either the 29th or the 30th. Now, Rob had talked about a daytime occultation of Aldebaran. Is it Aldebaran? Yes, it was Aldebaran. I didn't list that in the calendar because where it's going to be positioned in the sky here, it's going to be so low, I don't think we're going to be able to see it with a telescope even. All right? It's just doesn't look like a good one. But I have, for other months, I have a couple of daytime occultations. If you have a telescope, they're fun to watch. All right? But occultation where the moon occults a star, a bright star. If you have a telescope and it's, say, at least 20 or 30 degrees above the horizon, you can actually see both in broad daylight, the star and the moon. It's fun to watch. The interesting thing about the moon occulting a star is that the star blinks out like that. Okay, it just suddenly disappears. That gives you some sense of how very tiny a star is, and the fact that the moon has no atmosphere. So the star doesn't slowly fade out as it approaches the moon. All right, so we got the 2 star watches, and that's pretty much everything going on in the club. Yes?
I just wanted to mention our news blast. If you didn't get the news blast through your email over the last few days, I have a way to get you on that subscription list right at the bottom of the website, on every page of the website. So who did get a chance to get that email within the last day or two, just so I know what kind of reach I'm getting here. So this is our main way of reminding people the type of things that are on this. And it also is my way of contact in order to tell people about the days when we choose which day the Star Watch is on. So come the 27th, once we have a date figured out here, I will use the list here as my way of contacting and letting you know what day that is. But of course, you can always come to the website and check out for yourself which day it was on. After the 27th, one of these 2 days will be eliminated. Okay. Are there any other questions about this? In that email that I just sent out, I did also put it up on Facebook. So if you are not following us with Facebook and you have a Facebook account, please follow us on Facebook, as we are working on using that as another means of contact. And for members, I've just set up a members group within Facebook that we can have, more deep discussions about whatever topics interest you. Trying to allow for a little bit more discussion amongst club members. So yeah, check it out. Okay, that's all.
Okay, our next topic, we'll move on to the subject of astrophotography that should prove useful to you. We're just talking about taking pictures with an ordinary digital camera on a tripod, that's all. Okay, so what I have to do now is close down this computer and substitute mine, which will take just a moment.
While you're doing that, I'm assuming our last our last public meeting was canceled because of the weather. Is that right?
No.
Really?
We did it anyway.
You did
Yeah.
it anyway?
Mm-hmm.
Was there anything to see?
Now, you're talking about the Star Watch, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, we went ahead with it. We saw planets. We started about 30 minutes late just because there was still a little bit of drizzle out. But I think we only had about maybe a dozen people show up from the public attendees. And I think that's because most people figured it wouldn't happen because of the weather.
Yeah, people who use reflectors only have about an inch of water in the bottom of their telescope. These refractor guys, they just don't care, right?
No,
Yeah.
they're waterproof. Okay. All right, you take a picture. This is a good example. Rob Webb took this for me. In fact, he took a whole series.
Just got a lower noise.
Good. We need the lights down. When you take a picture in Lancaster County and most counties around the general Philadelphia area, that's much better, thank you. This will be what you get if you're just shooting on a tripod. These were 20-second shots. Now, first idea is, all right, you put your camera on a tripod and you point it at the sky and you take a picture. It needs to be a time exposure because part of the idea of taking a picture is the camera can show more than you can see with your eyes if you just give it a chance. And that chance means taking a time exposure. So somewhere in the menu system of your camera, it'll show you how to, you can set the duration of the shot. Okay, now some of the more inexpensive point and shoot cameras will limit you to maybe 15 seconds or 20 seconds. That's okay. And the reason is because if you go significantly longer than that, say 30 seconds, and we'll show you some examples, the stars begin to trail. They actually, instead of forming dots, they form a little line. And the thing is, with stars, is the minute that happens, you will never capture more stars because the stars keep moving. They're never exposing the same point on your detector, the camera. So 15, 20 minutes, 30 seconds, 30 at the most is all you should do, all right? It's just a waste of time to go beyond that. But there's some tricks you can play to get around that, and we'll talk about that. So we see stars. There are actually quite a few here. I'm not very good with this particular software package, and we'll talk about that in a minute, so bear with me. I'll zoom in. Notice there are a lot of faint stars in the background. Those you would never see with just your eyes. So for instance, there's Vega, a very bright star. And these stars, this one, this one, this one, and this one, compose an asterism, a lopsided rectangle here within Lyra. All this is Lyra. That's the famous double-double. If you have a telescope, go look at it. It's great. It's 2 double stars, and it's a lot of fun to look at. And by the way, the ring nebula is right there. So there are really a couple of things in Lyra that are easy to find because it's such a small constellation, and the stars are bright enough that you can see them even from downtown Lancaster. But from downtown Lancaster, for instance, see that faint star right there? You'd never see it with your eyes. In fact, it's doubtful you would even see the brighter one next to it, even out in the country. So the point is, already in the shot, Rob has gotten stars that you can't see with just your eyes. All right, so we've got a couple of problems with this. They are not showing up on this projector very well, which is interesting, but they're on my computer screen. This whole shot has a brownish cast to it. Can you see that? Okay, that's light pollution. All right, and we're going to show you how to get rid of that. The other thing is, if you zoom in really far in, see all this modeling in the background here? That's noise primarily from the camera and the sky. All sorts of spurious events are going on all the time at such a low light level up in the sky. You don't notice it, but the camera does. And so we're going to talk about how to get rid of that too, because that's one way you make fainter stars in your shot even more visible, is by getting rid of that background noise. So the first thing I'm going to show you is simply, let's talk about getting rid of the light pollution. I've got a whole list of shots that Rob took that we're going to stack together to improve them. But right now we're just going to look at this one right here. And what we're going to do is we can play around with that image with these sliders up here. Make it darker if we want to. But you have to be careful because at some point you'll start losing those faint stars. So if you just want to work on your one individual image, these sliders are up here are how you do it. Now this software package is called Deep Sky Stacker. It's free. You can download it off the web. It's one of the better free programs out there. And I would encourage you to play with it, start using it. It does a lot of things automatically for you, which is exactly what you want. You don't want to have to spend too much time learning how to run it like we do Microsoft Office or something like that. So if you just have to take a single shot, like I say, play around with these sliders up here, and you can make it look darker, better. But if you really want to improve things, the way you do that is by stacking a whole bunch of images together. Now, what all Rob did was took 11 or 12 shots on the tripod, one after the other. That's it. This stacking images is an interesting exercise because what happens is this program, Deep Sky Stacker, is going to line up all those images based on stars it chooses in your image. So despite the fact that those stars are slowly moving across the image, in effect, from one image to the next, it will align everything for you. Okay, it'll bring everything back in alignment. And the net effect goes something like this. We're going to tell it to check all those images, and then I'm going to tell it to stack. We're just, these are all sorts of settings you can have. We're just going to take all the defaults and say, okay, that's good for me. And it's going to merge all those images. Now, there's a lot of parameters you can play with in here if you decide you want to do more, right? In exactly how this stacking occurs. For instance, if you've got, one of the big problems you have with an image is airplanes. Okay, it's almost impossible to get rid of plane tracks in your images. And there are various ways. Remember when I said let's just take the default parameters and stacking? If you go into some of those parameters, there are ways you can get rid of those plane trails. Now, what we've got here is an image that looks like a piece of junk. I mean, this is bad, but we have to play with it. So what I'm going to do first is go into the luminance side, and I'm just going to start playing around with making the image itself darker. Oops. Okay, now, here's what I did. This is your image, this stack of colors here, all right? The stuff on this side, there's no data there in the image. And the stuff on this side, there's no data in the image either. By the way, to the left of the image, this zone here, that's all noise. Okay, so ultimately, the goal is to get rid of it. Now watch, this curve is how we manipulate what we see in the image, that curve right there. Now, some programs will let you actually use your mouse to manipulate this curve directly. This program doesn't do it. It lets you do it through these sliders. So what we want to do is drive this area down as low as possible. That's good, okay? In other words, we've knocked down the noise an awful lot. But we want to keep as much of this data as possible. So this section of the curve, we really want to raise it higher. Now that'll start giving you a sense of this vertical axis is how many things you have in your picture at these various levels. Like if you're looking at blue, you've got a lot of blue because it goes all the way up. All right. In terms of intensity, in other words, brightness, that's this scale, this side of the scale here. And notice everything, all the stars we have in there are pretty bright. All right, because they're high up in this direction, and there's lots of them because it goes vertically in this direction. But you really don't have to pay too much attention to that. Just the manipulation I'm showing you here is all you have to do. So midtones, let's see what we can do with midtones. Okay, now the curve responded pretty good. It's still fairly flat down here, but we've also picked up a lot more here.
Wait, can you go back a second?
Yes.
Can you just go before and after it hit apply? You're not seeing any changes as you're sliding?
Oh, no, I'm sorry. You won't see a change until I hit the apply button down here. Okay, I was just trying to show you how to interpret the histogram.
Okay.
Now this looks like it'll probably give us some pretty good results. So what we'll do is go in here and apply it. All right, now you're beginning to see a lot more stars, right? But the whole picture itself got darker, got a little bit lighter than we would like. So we can zoom in, and now you see a lot more stars, a lot better.
Is that the ring nebula in there already?
No,
Okay.
no. In fact, we're going to talk about that in just a minute. Now notice this slider really doesn't change our curve at all because there really isn't any data in there. We can tilt it down a little bit. We can make it a little bit darker that way. A little bit darker that way. And you can just play around, try different things until you've got the effect you want. Now, I don't know how visible it is to your eyes in this projector, but this area down here is browner than that area up there. That's probably, I wish Rob were here, I didn't have a chance to ask him. That's probably some local source of light pollution down in this corner. It's kind of tough to get rid of that in this program. Right? You're generally kind of stuck with it. But what we can do is change the color, neutralize the color of it. So what we're going to do is, you see we have a lot of red separated out here, some green separated out there, some blue separated here, and then we've got some gray, some dark brown, some lighter brown. Let's pull all those together. And this is probably one of the best features in Deep Sky Stacker. It goes like this. I'm going to just move this to pull that red over there. And the green, I'm going to pull over there. And the blue, kind of like that, and apply. And suddenly, I got rid of a lot of the color. I neutralized it, the background color. Now, does that look really complicated?
No.
Yeah, this is one of those programs where you just go in and play with it. You try different things, because you can always do a reset and go back to what it originally was. Or you can save any intermediate step and go back to that. It's really good that way. So that's,
Why did you go to the left rather than push it
You mean this?
So, yeah, all colors, why did you move them all to the left?
I was just lining them up.
So could we push them to the right more and get them to fit that curve a little bit better? If they all were to the
Let's
right?
try it and see. You're talking about color here, and color gets really tricky. That looks slightly better to me.
I see more stars.
Yeah, I see more stars. The background's a little bit lighter, but I see more stars. So maybe, here's the thing. You could slide this whole signal right here further in that direction. In other words, up this curve to make it brighter. Problem is the stars get brighter and the background gets brighter. So at some point, there's diminishing gains.
Where is the background on that graphic plot? What is it?
It's this.
So can we move the whole thing way over to the left? And
You mean
pull that
to the right?
to the left?
To the left?
Like pull it all the way, as far as to the left as it'll let you. And then fit the curve.
You're talking about down here.
And we're closer to that direction at least. And then move the curve to match it before you hit the line.
This, by the way, this is how you need to think in terms of. Now see, all this is doing now is manipulating this area over here, which we don't care about. Okay, that seemed to raise it a little bit. Just lost the stars. So let's go back to where we were before. Any questions?
So what's the difference, sorry, what's the difference between, you told me when we're out doing actually image capture, I want to have that whole histogram, that whole peak towards 1/4.
About 1/3 of the way in this direction. So that peak in the histogram on your camera, you'd like to get right about here.
But you can't do that in post-processing, right? I
No.
can't just force it, it has to be there initially.
In the data,
Okay.
which is what your camera is showing. Now, here's the reason why. If this, I didn't bring a picture of the histogram. All digital cameras will show you a histogram. You take an image, and somewhere in the menu system, you can bring up a histogram, which will look something like this.
We discussed
Okay?
it last time.
Now, that peak right there, that mountain, that's your data, that's what you're after. And you want, in the camera, you want that separated from this line here. Consider this line, this edge, to be all noise. So you want to pull the data up out of the noise that the camera's generating, okay? And to do that means you've got to have some separation here. This is pretty severe separation itself, which means that Rob actually overexposed a bit for the light pollution that he's got in his area, yes.
Lane, I'm curious, by stacking the 10 images, did we improve our quality of zooming?
Yes, the signal to noise ratio improves.
Can you do a couple of zoom clicks on that? I'm just curious.
Okay, well, the way you see that change is down in here. Look how much smoother this is
Yeah.
than it was. That's the noise you're getting rid of. But I have, here's the ugly side of the whole thing. Not only is this a bunch of stars embedded in this data, it's also light pollution. And it's really tough to mitigate light pollution, like I said, because the camera can't distinguish, and even this program can't distinguish between light pollution and actual data. Now, in this case, we're shooting only stars. That's a pretty blank area of the sky. It's nothing but stars there. almost. And so we can play these games and preserve the stars and darken the background and make it better. But if we were trying to get nebula, you know, let's say there was a nice big nebula curl around here of some sort, then the light pollution is much harder to deal with. And so here's the thing, if you're going to shoot stars, moon, or planets, and even some comets, okay, you can shoot right here in Lancaster County this way. If you want to shoot anything fainter, okay, you're better off going somewhere else, somewhere further away from city lines. You know, and I'll show you some examples of that in a minute.
Do you know which lens you had on there? Was it a regular 35mm lens on those images?
Yeah, it was a kit lens, to the best of my knowledge, set for 18mm. So that's pretty wide angle. In fact, what we'll do is, shoot, how do I bring back the list? I want to clear the list. Can I do, oh, okay, there we go. Another one that changes. Stop that. Okay. Just pick this one. And nope, it's not going to show it to me. Let's try this a different way.
Are you trying to have it?
Desktop. That'll do. Now this program will show me file information. So the shots he took, 20 seconds at 18mm is the lens he was using. Believe it or not, one of the great things about digital cameras is it embeds a lot of information in the image itself. And that's a good example right there. He was also working, let's talk for a moment about the ISO setting. This was set at 3200, which is a good new kind of in-between setting. How many people used to take picture with film? Okay. You used to buy film based on the ASA rating, is that what it's called? Right. And you know, typically most color film had an ASA rating of around 100 to 200. Sometimes you could go faster than that. The speed is like, it's how fast it can record the image. And speed really counts when you're shooting the sky like this. You want to get as much as you can, as quickly as you can. But the problem is you're also getting light pollution along with that. So most cameras today will go to at least six. Some of the older ones are limited to maybe an ISO rating, which was kind of equivalent to ASA, of about 1600. Here's a good rule of thumb. Look at the menu system, find the maximum ISO rating. Let's say it's 6,000. Cut that in half. That's a good place to start. So, like, I think 6,400 used to be the limit on a lot of cameras. So, like 3,200 would have been a good choice then.
He's using a very small file. I don't know why. He's not got it cranked up in terms of, it's 1280 by 854.
Yeah, I know. That puzzled me too when I saw
Why
it.
should be shooting it full 16
I have no idea.
megapixels? I'm not sure.
Yeah. That's, by the way, it's, what we're talking about is the number of data points in the image. That's really pretty small right there. And I'm not too sure why he was doing that or even how he did it. But that's why, come on, what are you doing to me? Oh, okay. With this program, I have to use this to zoom in. Notice the image, the stars are kind of square. That's what happens when you don't have enough pixels. I don't know how far you want to go into that subject. the number of pixels you have in your camera is set in the sensor when you buy it. You can't change any of that in terms of the maximum amount, but you can bring the number down if you choose to. I'm going to have to ask Rob what he was doing here. Doesn't make sense. Okay. Did I just make things worse for you, or did I clarify things? So, now, there are a few extended objects, in other words, big objects, faint objects, that you can shoot from here. One of them, believe it or not, is the Andromeda Galaxy. I don't have a shot of it here, taken on a tripod, but you can actually get a pretty good image of the image. It'll look like this kind of medium-sized fuzzy thing along with it. That's the whole galaxy. There's a bright nebula called M17. They sometimes call the Swan Nebula, sometimes called the Omega Nebula. It's down in Sagittarius. You can actually shoot it from here. It'll show up as a red spot in your image. And that's down in the southern part of the sky. So there are a few things you can shoot from here, extended objects, what we call deep sky objects. But on the whole, if you want to do that, go to a darker place. All right, how are we doing? Okay. I'm going to knock this down. Now, I'm going to show you something that will make you very jealous. Last week I was in Cherry Springs State Park. All week, and we just had fabulous skies. Okay, hang on just a second, we'll get there. Okay. Tripod, 1 minute.
How long?
1 minute. That's the Milky Way. No, this is 30 seconds, I'm sorry. Notice I got a little trailing in the stars. But when you're shooting the Milky Way, that doesn't hurt too bad to have that. And this is about the way it looks naked eye. Now let me show you what it looks like at 1 minute. Hang on, we'll come back to this, don't worry. All right, go the other way. No, okay, never mind. I don't think that shot's in here. But notice the difference in how bright the sky is that you get from one shot to the next. That's actually the brightness of the sky changing a little bit. That goes on all the time. This has to do with all sorts of stuff that's going on in the upper atmosphere. And that adds to the noise of your image. You wouldn't notice it from here because that noise is overpowered by light pollution, but up there, there's essentially no light pollution. So going to a dark place, now this, what I used was just the lens that came with my camera. It's hard to avoid airplane trails. They're everywhere. There's another airplane trail. But like I say, stacking can get rid of that usually. And in one of these is a satellite. I'm not sure it's going to show up on this projector though. Airplane. No, you can't see it. All right. So even just going, if you want to shoot something, darker skies, something fainter, even Mill Creek is a good place to go. It's actually a good deal darker there than here, even though it's only, 10 miles away, 12 miles away. All right? Now, do you want to go any deeper into this subject? Like a more advanced technique or something? How many people would
enjoy that.
Are you saying today or?
Right now, yeah, we have time. Yeah, I came prepared. I just didn't know what you would want to do.
I would like 5 minutes then, Lee.
Fair enough. Okay, but what I'm gonna do is, in fact, I think I have it. Okay, that's my telescope. Normally, I would have a camera mounted back here, and there'd be, I think, about 8 wires hanging off of the camera and the focuser and other things like that, because I run it all from my computer. So I'm not even near the telescope when I'm taking a picture, which is a good thing because you don't want to bump into it and do things like that. You don't need an expensive rig like this, but you do need to pay attention to all these things, like you need an equatorial mount and stuff like that, that we've talked about here in the club before. If you go to that kind of effort and expense, you're rewarded with, eventually, once you work out all the bugs, which it seems like you never really do, by the way. What are you doing? Let's see, where's a good one? This should do. With something like this.
That's pretty nice.
Yeah, now this is after processing, and I'm going to run you through the steps very quickly. I took this last week up at Cherry Springs, and this is a star-forming region. It's pretty interesting. Associated with this are a lot of features that are interesting to dive into. Let's do this really quickly. Let's go down here too. I got this from an academic source. This is a map of what's going on in there. It's really cool. This is the same object I just showed you, but it's processed differently to bring out different things, different features. Okay, but let's talk about this. It's there's an open cluster right here of stars, and notice it says it's about 10 light years closer to us than that nebula in the background. And it was the first cluster to form from the original giant molecular cloud that we see here. And that cloud, what started the star formation was that cloud collided with the backside of the Sagittarius arm of our galaxy. And whenever a collision like that occurs, you get stars form. And there's a bunch of interesting things in here. They point out, notice just the word Bach here, and I don't know if they have any more. It's easier to see them in my image. It's these dark areas here, here. There's a dark area there. That's where stars are forming. Okay, they tend to form in like a cocoon of dark gas. And the only way we know there are stars forming in there is we look at it with infrared light. Because at infrared wavelength, all the light from those stars is passing through that dark gas, and we can see it. We can see those stars in there. And even measure them, measure their age, measure their velocity, all sorts of things. And then there's some really exotic stuff like, these are magnetic flux tubes over here. This is also a magnetic flux tube. You wouldn't want to be near a magnetic flux tube because the magnetic energy alone would kill you, all right? And that's what these are. That's why these streaks are here. And you can't see them quite as well on this projector, but these streaks are down here too. So wherever you see a streak like that, it can be a magnetic flux tube. All right, and this is a pretty violent event, transfer of energy from one place to another. It gets strung out like that across the gas. It's still there. And all that's getting powered right now by this one star, which is called Herschel 36. That's a supergiant star. It's only a few million years old. It will only live a few billion more years because it's so big, and then it's going to go supernova. But meanwhile, it's pumping out this tremendous amount of energy, which is ionizing this hydrogen gas, and that's what makes it red. So that's a violent place we're looking at right there. And the numbers I've seen said it's even more violent than the Orion Nebula. How many people have seen the Orion Nebula? Okay, yeah, I mean, you talk about a chaotic swirl of gases. This is even worse. So, I took this image. How did I start?
How many light years across that image?
Does it say here? No, but I've got that somewhere else. I think the number's about 150, but hang on, we'll look it up. 5,000 light years away, about 130 light years across. Mainly hydrogen, of course, much of it ionized. That's why it's glowing red. That was the star Herschel 36 I was talking about. And then you've got that open star cluster that we pointed out. It's a very young cluster. And we talked about the Bach globules. Bart Bach was the one that postulated what they were, and then later on when we were launching infrared telescopes out into space, we were able to confirm that. Those are just notes about what I have to go back and try to. I don't think you're ever done processing images like this. Okay.
How can flux tubes like that kill a human being? Does it have to do like with radiation?
Yes.
Ah,
Electromagnetic radiation, which is one facet of that is light. Light can kill you if you get close enough to the sun. Now think about this. What is transferring the heat out of the sun? Remember, space is essentially empty, so what's doing it? It's not like a convection oven where we're heating air, and you know, air would hit you and burn you. It's light. It's much of what when you step outside and the sun hits you and you feel heat, that's infrared light. Okay? That's how our bodies interact with infrared wavelengths, is as heat. We absorb it and keep it as heat. And so it's the light from the sun. And remember, magnetism and light are two sides of the same kind of energy. We don't have the time to go into that tonight. But have we ever talked about that in the past? I think we have, yes. Okay. Very quickly then, what I did was I took, just like Rob did, I took a whole bunch of images. And I'm going to go in here and stack them, just like we did with Rob's images.
Can we see what one individual image looked like first?
Yes, we can. Absolutely. Let me tell you, it doesn't look like much. Open. So here is a luminance image. That's it.
That was what, a minute?
10 minutes, which means it has to be guided,
Yes.
obviously, which is what the equatorial mount on the telescope is all about. Okay, so I took a whole bunch of these.
Is your camera an RGB?
No, it's monochrome with a filter wheel. So
And you're taking.
I have to take one color image, I have to take at least 4 images. Red, green, blue, and then luminance. Actually, I don't have to take the luminance, but now you're getting into the technical side of all of it. So you need at least 3 with my camera, red, green, blue, to create a color image.
Do you, not to complicate things, but just a quick question, do you do flats and everything else with that, or do you not have to with that?
No, you have to.
Okay.
But flats I don't need. I do dark and bias though. The reason I don't use flats is because I keep my optical system so clean and the camera so clean. There's no disruption from dust or whatever, which is typically why you would take a flat. Now you're getting into a really technical side then.
Sorry.
That's okay.
Wayne, on those dark streaks that we're talking about,
Yes.
do you new ones form or are they pretty fixed and that?
No, they are not fixed. It's a very turbulent place, constantly changing. Okay, now it's loading up. This is what I have. Out of the, shot through the blue filter, I have those 7 images. Green gives me those 7. This is just grayscale. It's called luminance, no filter. And then red, I have these images. First thing I have to do is check the quality. Go through and measure them and see if it red flags any of these. It's checking, this is a filter I set about making sure there are no oblong stars in there or square stars or something like that from bad guiding or whatever. And it's got a few in luminance that it doesn't like, but I'm going to tell it. Normally I would go back and look at those and see what's wrong, but I'm going to tell it to use them anyway. Aligning, I'm going to tell it to use the stars to align, and now it's combining. Now, here's the thing, when you bring an image up, an awful lot of what I'm about to do in terms of what's called stretching the image is automatically done in a digital camera, in a snapshot camera or a DSLR. So you never have to do it. And that's why we didn't have to do any of this. 25 errors, oh my gosh.
What?
Okay, we'll have to look and see. This is all part of the fun. But what happens is okay, it could not align a bunch of them. All right, so here's what I'm going to do.
Please.
Just pretend this actually worked. Play along with me. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go load the original stacking result that did work. Okay, and it looked like this. All right. Now, that doesn't look much like the image I showed you.
Oh,
All right, now here's the reason why. If I look at the histogram for this, it looks different than what I was showing you before. Notice, okay, here's the signal that I'm looking for. This is all the light coming out of the nebula. These spikes here are the stars in there. Notice the nebula is dimmer than the stars, but there's a lot more of it than there are stars. And also notice I have almost no gap here for the noise. That's because my camera works very differently. It's literally refrigerated. Okay, it brings the temperature of the sensor down to the point where it's making almost no noise. So I can pretty much ignore the noise thing. That's what you spend the money for. But at the same time, this image you see right here is an interpretation by this software of how that image ought to look, and I don't like that. There's an awful lot of information surrounding this bright core of the nebula. See, there's that one main flux tube going through there. that I want to pull out. And so I got to literally stretch it out. And this, all that's done automatically in your digital snapshot camera. You never have to think about that. But this camera's done. It doesn't know anything. So one of the easiest ways for me to do this is through the software. I'll pick this out, which is something that's called a digital development folder. And just taking the default settings in it, then I'm starting to pull out some of the famous stuff. And just like we fooled around a lot with the other image from Rob, that's what I would start doing now. I just try different things to try to make it better.
Your mic's dead, by the way.
What?
Your mic is dead, just figuring out. Your microphone is no longer with
The batteries, okay, it's gone. All right, any questions about any of that? So, using,
That's an image I would be perfectly happy with. That's beautiful.
wait, you ought to see it on the computer. This is nothing compared to what's on the computer screen, I hate to say. So, the way I do imaging, I spend a huge amount of time taking pictures, typically between 4 and 5 hours. And then I pull them all together and I process them just to make one image. So that's if you want to do this kind of thing, that's the loss you have. It takes a tremendous amount of time to do this compared to just putting your camera on a tripod and taking pictures.
But Elaine, with your setup, you're not out there taking pictures though, are you?
No, it's all automatic. I'm the world's laziest astro amateur, and I'm proud of it. Yeah, it's totally automated. I go upstairs and watch TV with my wife. But the console I use is in the basement, and I run a couple of wires out through the tube in the basement wall to the telescope, so I don't care whether it's cold or not.
This is all done at
Or
Cherry.
if I'm up in Cherry Springs, I'm in town. Yes.
Is there really, for the average astrophotographer, now it's the guy who's got megabucks, but for the average, is there really nowadays an advantage of using a monochrome versus an RGB?
The advantage decreases with every new generation of sensor. It's, I have a friend in New Jersey who makes a living off this stuff, and he uses nothing but the recent versions of DSLRs, and he does really, really good. So, but once again, he'll spend several evenings processing an image like this. In other words, the magic is in the processing, not in the camera. So, the recent DSLRs, the good ones, they're really good.
How about a cooled monitor, a cooled RGB? Like a dedicated astronomy with color?
Oh, you can get them.
I know you can get them, I'm asking.
What's the advantage?
Well, you're saying he's using a DSLR and having that much luck with it. How much, you always talk about like the last 5% and the last 10%. How close are we going to be able to get with like a cool, dedicated astrophotography camera that is
One-shot color.
just a one-shot color, yeah?
What you lose is the very fine detail that's removed by the Bayer matrix in the camera. But here in the Northeast, our air isn't steady enough so much of the time to get that fine detail. It's exceptional at night. It's all a matter of the detail you get in the image.
And you can't do hydrogen alpha or any of the other, like,
No, you can't.
type of filtering.
The minute you got a color camera, you can't do any of that. Like with this image, I can dive in and see, quite a bit, like that little thing right there. That shape, that kind of detail, you would not get with there with a one-shot color camera.
Can you pull up your helix beforehand? That's what I was going to show them, the difference between your helix with this kind of idea with this was,
I don't have any orders, never took one.
wasn't it, what were we looking at earlier? Yours, just beforehand.
This,
What, no,
well, you
you
should,
had,
you should see it on the computer screen. It's totally different than what you're seeing.
no, I know what I'm looking at. I'm saying, the one that you and I have been looking at before the meeting today. The one I was processing, and then you pulled up your version of it.
Oh, we have 27.
Yeah,
That's not
that
bad.
helix.
Okay. Okay, cancel that. We're talking about a planetary nebula called M27. And that's what I am. Need a pointer?
I just need to get the computer for now. So the reason I asked Lane to pull this up is because, you know, maybe to show the difference, because the actual only difference in this between his image and mine is the camera itself, because I in fact shot it through Lane's telescope. So it could give you a pretty good estimate as to how things should be different with the monitoring camera.
Yeah, that's good thinking. I haven't thought about
Now,
that.
I don't know how much luck I'm gonna have here. Pulling up the picture I wanted, because now that I think about it, it may not be on this drawing. I'm sure it was. All right, well, maybe I can't immediately. Wait, do you mind giving me the back, please? Thank you.
Yeah, this would be a pretty direct comparison, because it was taken with the same equipment, telescope drawing, all that, but without the
And-
different cameras.
That image you had up, your best guess, I mean, it was faint background storms, how many light years away were they taking?
I can't tell you that, but I do have the databases to tell you that. We'd have to look it up on the computer. An easier measurement I can tell you is, in a dark sky with your eyes, you can see down about magnitude 6 stars. The higher the magnitude number, the fainter the star. My camera will easily shoot down to magnitude 23 stars. Extremely faint.
Really go over.
Typically, but not always, the fainter the star, the further away it is. But it's also dependent on the size. The bigger the star, the brighter it is, so the closer it may appear.
Okay, so I
So
found it.
I couldn't even hesitate. Every star I image is within the Milky Way, though. Maybe we can back into this a different way. And the Milky Way is about 100,000 light years across, so every one of those stars is probably within 100,000 light
Oh,
years.
good. Right.
Shirley?
When you're doing your imaging, if there's any moisture in the air, if you have moisture in the air or something, does that affect the camera
Oh, yes.
photo at all?
Yes.
Or just,
That's one reason I use a refractor. It's a closed system,
oh, okay.
so moisture can't, I won't say can't get in, but it's difficult for it to do that. So all I have to do is keep dew off the outside of the lens,
Okay.
which I do with a heating strap.
Oh, sorry, because your reflectors are all open.
Right.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, let's try this again.
Now, of course, if you're shooting from inside an observatory, like Tom does, you don't have to worry nearly as much about dew, because the observatory itself keeps a lot of the dew out.
Did you ever find doing your camera, does that affect the camera at all, or?
Well, on the
your camera-
outside, sure, but once again, it's sealed,
It's all sealed.
so it can't get inside.
So, okay,
There we go.
I think that might have been the original, let me just see here. XCF font. Object with. Okay, I don't know why it's doing this thing. What do you have for opening images?
Well,
Here, photo people.
yeah, try that one. It's pretty versatile. But it doesn't know, I've never heard of that format stuff.
Okay, this isn't really the post-processed image, this is just the original after stacking. Unfortunately, we've got quite a bit of, or, you know, it looks a lot better. You can look at it if you'd like on my computer when we're done here. But, you know, we're getting basically the same object, but, and if you look at my screen here, it's definitely not after processing because there's lots of light pollution, which you can't see here, but if you look on the screen, it's very brown. And I was actually able to remove that, so you're not really getting the detail that I wanted to here out of this picture. But compared to something like what Lane had, which was here, you know, it's the same object, it's just better. in his.
So yours was through a DSLR, is that what?
Mine is through,
DSLR in southern Berks County.
yes, not cherry springs.
Now, this is one, if you're shooting through a telescope, there probably are a couple of dozen objects you can pretty easily, or more, you can pretty easily shoot from here, would you agree? In other words, you don't need to go to Cherry Springs if you're shooting through a telescope.
And for all intents and purposes, this is equivalent, with maybe not a little bit worse light pollution than Middle Creek. So if you were to go to Middle Creek and do some imaging there, which I am trying, actually just got a phone call from them today, I'm going to try to work out a working agreement with them again for us to be able to go up there and get those dark skies available to our club members. If we get that, we could get images very close to this, if not better than this,
So how many images?
pre-processed.
How many stacked images,
This was, I think, 7 to 10.
and what were their exposures?
What would you say, 30?
Probably 5 minutes.
Was it 5 minutes? I guess they were.
I'll bet, yeah.
Each.
Through the same telescope?
Correct.
Okay.
And like I said, if you want to come up front and look at what I have on my screen here, I can actually display the, you know what? Shouldn't be that hard. You've got it all plugged in here. Let's see. Here is the post-processed version. Let's see. 200. Okay. So a little bit more detail and quite a bit darker if you were to come up here, because that's, if you look at Lane's screen, and then if you look at this screen, look at the background black levels on the, that's post-processed. And it just was something I was screwing around with free software, Deep Sky Stacker, and then I used a program called GIMP, which is what this is currently in right now. GIMP is like Photoshop for free. So with a little bit of work in 2 free programs, I was able to eliminate all that background black level and bring it down to something that's a little bit more reasonable and draw out some more nebulosity. But compared to Lane's camera, still not quite there, but
I also wasn't at Cherry Springs. I was in my parents' backyard. So, who knows? I hope to get data from Cherry Springs soon, and maybe I can bring that back, and we can have a discussion about the differences there as well.
What was that software you were talking about there?
GIMP, G-I-M-P. It's graphics, image, something, manipulation, processing, or I don't know, something like that. And then it's Deep Sky Stacker or Registax, both are free. And I also, while I have this up, I might as well show people this. I'm working on this right now, so I don't know how well it's currently working, but there's another software that I use to do some lunar stuff, which of course I have on my drive. And I was able to get, because the software that Lane is talking about is strictly for stars and for nebulas and such, deep sky objects. If you try to run pictures of the moon through it, it can't stack them. It doesn't know how to deal with it. So what I'm trying to find is a good way to get some nice looking stacked moon pictures, which I have here. And haven't had too much luck with the software yet, but it's not going terribly bad. Okay, that's not cool. Let's just go back to a single image. So this is one of my single image stacked moon pictures. You just did this to me, Lane.
Time to give up.
I know, right?
Yeah.
Seriously, we're almost at the
I know.
8 o'clock, so.
All right, well, I'll just end with
Yeah, what we're talking about now is shooting planetary in the moon. That is a really different process.
But possible from your backyard, which is why I was bringing it up.
Yeah, you can do it from anywhere.
And a great place to start for someone who's just getting into it. So you get a lot of detail. That's a single picture through my telescope. So
You can learn a lot about your camera and your whole system out
Yeah.
there too, by just.
yeah, you don't want to
You
go.
can see what works and what doesn't work right away, just on that single.
You don't want to go to the nebulas right away. If you're getting started, this is probably a great place to start. So that's why I wanted to show you. All right. Any questions for Lane or myself before we wrap up?
Yeah, Lane, don't you think it's very important to stress to people the type of camera telescope combination is if you start with the wrong thing, something that is a wide field telescope versus a narrow field telescope, you're just going to spin the wheels.
This is true. On the other hand, most people do start with the equipment they already have. And then they learn from there what works and what doesn't. But that's a whole nother discussion. But you're right, it's critical. Like when I went through to choose
last month.
the sensor, how I matched it up to the full point from the telescope and everything, that was a process in its own. But just start with what you have, in my opinion.
Yeah, we did discuss that last month, and if you weren't here when we are interested in image capture, it is up on our YouTube page. The full lecture is there, as this one will be as well. I'm recording this tonight. So if there's anything we said that you want to go back and review, just go to our website, and there is a YouTube link on there, and you can watch this and find out what was that thing that Lane did that made that happen, and you can just find that part of the video, and there it is.
Okay, we're done. Thank you for coming.
Anybody interested in going to scooters afterwards, probably hang out afterwards, let us know, and we'll count you in our group.
Yeah.
How you doing, man? Having a good summer?
Good, you? Good?
Enjoying your summer?
Oh, yeah.
No, it's been good.
Who does treasury now? Is it okay. They got to remind me. When it's due, I don't pay it. It's from
Yeah, that's a tough time. Well, what
haven't paid it in a long time.
Well, what you started doing started this year, trying to get all the these, January, mid-January, for the whole day.
See what I got here, everybody sees that. See what I want to pay the money.
You think we're going to
Yeah, they are, I kept sharing, email,
Okay, thanks, everybody.
I found out